Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about an idea that could completely change our classrooms. What if today's headlines were actually tomorrow's lesson plan? Well, we're diving into an initiative that's doing just that. So let's kick things off with a question I think a lot of us have asked at some point. You're sitting in class learning about history or science, and you just find yourself wondering, how does any of this connect to the super fast-paced, always changing world that's happening right outside the window? Well, what if we could actually bridge that gap? That's really the core idea behind a new educational initiative that's totally rethinking what students learn from by turning the daily news into a living, breathing part of the curriculum. Okay, so how in the world does this work? Let's dig into how you can actually connect the very structured world of the classroom with the messy, exciting reality of the world today. Think about it this way. On one hand, you've got textbooks. They're absolutely essential, right? They give us that structured foundation, the core knowledge we all need. But then, on the other hand, you have the real world, which is, well, it's anything but static. It's constantly moving, constantly evolving. And that right there brings us to a huge challenge for education today. How do we make learning feel timely, relevant, and genuinely engaging for a generation that is more plugged into global events than any before it? Okay. So let's look at the solution that's being proposed, because it's pretty innovative. It's this idea of using the news itself as a new kind of textbook. And here you have it. The whole initiative is called Current Affairs in Textbooks. The concept is actually really simple, but it's also pretty profound. You take carefully selected news articles and you weave them directly into language classes. It's not about replacing textbooks, but about adding this rich, real-world context to them. This whole approach is really built on one powerful guiding principle. The things of the world are the content of the classroom. It basically suggests that the most relevant stuff to learn about is the stuff that's happening right now all around us. Okay, that sounds great in theory, but what about in practice? What are the actual tangible benefits of learning this way? Why does this really work? So let's really break down the advantages. Because when you bring current events into school, it's not just about knowing what's going on. It actually changes how students learn, which is pretty cool. So first up, just think about the impact on core academic skills. Instead of only reading passages from a textbook, students are suddenly analyzing real articles, they're debating different points of view, and they're learning to articulate their own thoughts. This just naturally makes them better readers, better writers, and most importantly, it develops critical thinking because they have to evaluate sources and understand context. And it goes way beyond just academics. We're also talking about perspective. By really engaging with the news, students start to develop more social awareness. They see a direct line connecting what they learn to their own lives, and they get a much deeper, more nuanced understanding of what's happening, both at home and around the world. But, of course, let's be real. You can't just hand a student a newspaper and expect magic to happen. The real secret sauce here is how you present this material. It absolutely has to be engaging. So to make this really stick, the learning has to be active, not passive. The sources suggest a few great strategies here. First, use the articles as a jumping-off point for classroom debates. That builds confidence. Second, you can turn the ideas into interactive games to make it more fun. And third, and this is a big one, let the students actually have a say in picking the topics that they're interested in. When you add all this up, what you're seeing is a really fundamental shift in how learning happens. You're moving away from that passive act of just memorizing facts for a test, and you're moving towards the active, dynamic process of having an informed discussion. Students actually get to be participants in their own education, not just spectators. All right, let's zoom out for a second and just wrap up by looking at the bigger picture here, what this all could mean for the future of learning. At the end of the day, an initiative like this is a fantastic reminder that education isn't just about cramming your head full of facts and figures. It's about developing the skills and the mindset you need to understand the super complex world we live in and figuring out your own place in it. And so this leaves us with one final and I think really important question. If we can successfully bring the news into the classroom, what's next? What other essential real-world skills, things like financial literacy or digital citizenship, should be a fundamental part of every single student's education? Thanks for watching.